offering forgiveness, feeding dogs, saving thousands of lives. Here are 7 times games punished us for being good. Gaming morality is usually straightforward. You do nice things and you get rewarded. We can shortcut fights by being diplomatic or get better endings by showing compassion. In this respect, games are a bit like dogs. As long as we're nice, we won't get bitten. But there are some exceptions which prove the rule. Some games follow the phrase of no good deed goes unpunished. That means the harder you try to be lovely, the worse things are going to get. Perhaps this is an incentive to try an evil playthrough, or perhaps it's so developers can laugh at us when we spend 2 hours helping a stranger, only to unleash some unspeakable and timeless evil. In this video, we'll examine 7 times games tricked us into being good, only to pull the carpet of benevolence out from underneath us. These are the games that taught us not to trust. Tough love classics that will reduce your faith in digital humanity. And please bear in mind that this video will contain minor spoilers for the games listed in the description below, so proceed at your own discretion. Here are 7 times games punished us for being good. Few games embody this trope like the original Fallout. Over the course of the game, you'll destroy super mutant enclaves, defend fragile towns, and eventually save your home, Vault 13, by fixing its water supply. But when you return to the vault triumphant, you're sent into the wasteland so tales of your adventures don't inspire other vault dwellers to leave. Well, thank you very much. Maybe there's something noble about doing all that selfless work only to be cast out so you can wander the scorched earth being all contemplative and deep. Or maybe it's a massive slap to the face after hours spent saving countless lives, and in case you're unsure which one it is, it's definitely the second one. And worst of all, it doesn't even work. Canonically, the other vault dwellers protest at you being exiled, and they leave as well. Well, Overseer, we hope you enjoy your empty vault and its supply of cool, fresh, running water. This is a trend that continues in Fallout 3. If your karma meter is high enough, mercenaries from the Talon Company will come after you. Although in fairness, if it's low enough, you end up being hunted as well. But it's not really the same, is it? Being punished for being evil is called justice, and as a species, we tend to rather like it. Conversely, being attacked by mercenaries for being nice is a bit like being stalked by a murderous clown because you baked your mum a birthday cake. Now, we're not investigating why games do this today, because that would be an entirely different video, and I'm more comfortable just being pithy, but it is an interesting one. Games have to challenge you even when you're following the rules, and we've got another great example of that coming up next. Or more accurately, a boatload of examples, because the entire Witcher series is crammed with moments that make you think like you're doing the right thing when you're actually an awful human being with terrible judgment. Honouring your agreement with Iorveth in The Witcher 2, for example, leads to race riots and non-human slaughter. And a tower full of mice in The Witcher 3 has a savage end for anyone who tries to reunite lost loves from beyond the grave. It feels like a classic doomed romance quest, a spirit named Annabelle trapped in a tower, cursed by her love for a fisherman named Graham. Surely the best ending comes from reuniting them, right? No. Return Annabelle's bones to Graham and you'll accidentally unleash a plague maiden, now free to corrupt the world with disease and pestilence. It's a bit like your Cupid if Cupid spread smallpox instead of love. And then there's the Bloody Baron, perhaps the most nuanced and engaging RPG quest ever plotted, and one that's impossible to navigate with a standard moral compass. If you haven't played it, skip this bit, and if you have, feel free to nod along while we talk about how clever it is. The most striking thing about the Bloody Baron quest is that there is no happy ending. However you try and resolve things, there's always one loose thread left dangling. It's full of false flags which take you to dark places, a tale of buried babies, witchcraft and personal failure that remains relatable despite all the sorcery and horror. And finally, as a personal aside, it also has the best representation of West Midlands British accents in all of gaming.
I pay no heed to peasant babbling. Common folk see witches, wizardry, devils and who knows what the else every which way they turn.
Knights of the Old Republic 2 is brilliant, weird, and almost certainly unfinished, and despite it being wobblier than the BioWare original, there's loads here worth your time. In particular, the hazy line it draws between good and evil. There's one event in particular that demonstrates how good Knights of the Old Republic 2 is at moral ambiguity. At one point, you'll have the option to give some money to a beggar. Do so, and you'll get a stern dressing down from your shadowy mentor, Kriya.
Giving him what he has not earned is like pouring sand into his hands.
But that's not all. In addition to a matronly telling off, like you've been caught stealing dumplings from the family pantry, giving money to the beggar actually makes his life worse. Hand over the cash and you have to watch as he gets mugged by another NPC, all because you tried to help. You've essentially monetized bullying. This is typical of the thoughtful way that Knights of the Old Republic 2 deals with morality. It's in clean contrast to the simpler methods of the first game, which let you feel good about yourself just because you decided not to savagely murder all of your party members. Was any of this enough to stop me being nice? No, of course not. What's the point of being a Jedi if I can't clumsily be the cause of beggar-on-beggar violence? And no, I haven't thought any of this through. Anyone who's played a Telltale game knows that all of your decisions, no matter how benign, will probably have disastrous consequences. And like many of the games on this list, The Walking Dead at least warns you that you're not getting the traditional treatment when it comes to moral choices. But even then, Clementine's story in The Walking Dead Season 2 can be unrelentingly bleak. If you cut off Sarita's arm to save her from zombification, for example, you eventually get blamed for her death. And if you try to feed a hungry dog, you get bitten. This is a world so bleak, even the dogs are disagreeable. The whole game feels like an exercise in conditioning you to distrust everyone around you. The more you like someone, the more likely it is they'll either die horribly, betray you, or die horribly after betraying you. So there you have it. Stop thinking the zombie apocalypse is going to be all cricket bats and shopping malls and saving the world, because it's actually going to be awful. There's a lovely, ambiguous example of a game punishing you for being good in Silent Hill 3. When you reach the chapel, Heather has the option to duck into a confessional box and speak to an unseen woman. After you've listened to her horrible story, you can choose to forgive her, although doing so makes it far more likely you'll get the negative, possessed ending. Now, there are some people that would say pretending to be a priest and forgiving sins that aren't asked to forgive isn't the traditional interpretation of good. That, in fact, it's bad in the same way that stealing a doctor's uniform and trying to carry out open heart surgery while reading Wikipedia is bad. But it's interesting because leniency and understanding in games are usually seen as positive traits. There's another instance of this in Silent Hill 2, with a bad ending that's actually harder to get than the good one. Dote too much on Maria and you'll get a different ending in which James leaves Silent Hill with her. It suggests that James is still emotionally damaged, and worse still, that Maria might have the same illness that killed your wife, Mary. So you might think you're being helpful by popping your head around the cell door and checking everything is tickety-boo, but what you're actually doing is replacing your dead wife, the dead wife you killed, remember, with someone who looks a little bit like her. And you can avoid this ending and actually get a better one by hitting Maria with a plank, because nothing says I'm emotionally stable now, thank you for asking, like grievous bodily harm. I'm fine now, thank you, I'm fine, everything's alright, everything's good, great! Next up, Dark Souls. Although, strictly speaking, this one also includes Demon Souls. You don't have to do that every single time I mention a Miyazaki game. Stop it! These games often punish players for trying to be helpful. There's Yurt in Demon Souls, who, if you release him from his cage, cheerfully murders his way through all the NPCs in the Nexus. And then there's Patches, a reoccurring Miyazaki character who betrays you every single time you help him. And finally, there's Knight Lautrec from Dark Souls, who slays the precious Firekeeper if you release him from prison. Or if you don't. Dark Souls even breaks the golden rule, golden like Lautrec, yeah, of letting you easily take revenge for a betrayal. Actually, finding Lautrec is a convoluted pain in the rump, and fighting him is even worse because he cheats. Of course, he cheats. He's got two stupid little helpers, you can't block his attacks, you can't heal, and I hate him. I hate him. He's a swaggering, shiny Firekeeper killing. And finally, there's the ending of Dark Souls itself. If you listen to the advice of Kingseeker Frampt, essentially following what feels like the less evil choice, you're merely perpetuating a doomed and unsustainable world. Now for once I'm talking about an Elder Scrolls game that isn't Skyrim, because the best example of this trope, right down to the quote of the exact thing we're talking about, comes from Morrowind.
No good deed goes unpunished, Outlander.
Early on in the game you'll find a damsel in distress who has carelessly lost her ring at the bottom of a small lake. Agree to help her and you'll spend the next 10 minutes scrubbing about in a pond trying to find some jewellery that's barely visible to the human eye. And when you finally find it, she and her invisible friend try and kill you. If you're anything like me, instead of running away or reloading, you'll spend the next hour running backwards and slashing in an act of petty defiance. And in this case, it's absolutely worth it, because you get the Amulet of Shadows, a powerful magical trinket which makes you almost invisible, and you get to keep the worthless ring as well. This event taught me two things about Morrowind. Firstly, that being a dashing knight isn't always the most practical option, and secondly, that things are much easier to hunt when you're invisible. So in a roundabout way, you do get a reward, it's just that you almost get killed in the process, and it'll change your character class from adventurer to magical coward. Although speaking realistically, it would have been much easier just to drown you in the pond while you were looking for the ring. It's not a suggestion, I mean it's just a practical observation. Drowning easier. So there you go, 7 times games punished us for being good. Let us know in the comments if you can think of any other examples, subscribe to Logitech G for more features, and give us a like if you enjoyed this. We promise nothing bad will happen.